everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're talking about episode 5 of Vampire Dormitory. Not gonna lie, at this point in the story, I'm 100% Team Len. I absolutely loved what they did with his character in this week's episode, and I know this probably means I'm gonna get screwed over as the story progresses, because Luca saved Mito's life in episode 1, which means that he probably falls under what I call the first boy rule, because he was the first guy that she actually had like some form of emotional connection with. But I can't help it. Len's backstory is amazing. We find out so much awesome stuff about him, and this episode to me was super exciting in practically every way. Much in part thanks to the way that his character was actually developed. First off, let's talk right about what we left off with at the end of episode 4, which was where something really weird and freaky was going on and we were wondering what the hell was up. Well, we got our answer right away. For once, this show did not dick around at giving us an answer. And it turns out that what the fact of the matter is that Len is actually what's called a Dhampir, which is a half-human, half-vampire hybrid. And I thought that was a really cool way to advance his character. It makes sense given his powers and abilities, and given that there is a stigma against being a Dhampir, and that humans and vampires both seem to not really accept him, I can understand why he is so adamant about making sure that nothing happens to Mito to cause her to actually change what she is. His whole character makes a lot more sense now because this is a man who is living with the consequences of having something like this be his reality, and who has experienced the trauma and the isolation that would come about in this universe from being what this means and what it entails. Finding out more about his mom and that part of his backstory really ripped my heart out, because it seems to me like his one ally truly did just abandon him. Now, I wonder whether that is actually the case or whether that is how he perceives it. It's entirely possible, in my opinion, that maybe the dad needed to turn her into a vampire for some other reason. Maybe there was a medical situation, or maybe there's some kind of consequence when a vampire finds their mate in this universe. We still don't know all the details on that. It's interesting that this vampire actually got this woman pregnant and they created this half-breed character, and that's all gone down. It's interesting that he didn't realize this woman was important enough to him to turn her before she got pregnant and ended up having Len, so that's definitely something to wonder about. But my main thing, of course, is wondering whether his actual perception of the situation is true, or whether there are circumstances beyond what he could have possibly understood as a little boy. Either way, very, very sad. And it was wonderful seeing Mito support him and comfort him and share her backstory with him and share her experience with him, even if she's still hiding what she truly is. I find it really funny that we're like finding out about these vampires and half vampires and stuff, and that our main character's secret is, oh, I'm a girl. I do find that really, really weird and funny. I suppose that it keeps their overall dynamic relatively even, and I suppose we shouldn't worry too much about whether other characters are going to forgive Mito when the truth is revealed, because if they don't, that would kind of like ruin the entire plot, so I'm hoping we don't see too much of that kind of nonsense going forward. The consequences of Len's inner nature are also really interesting. The fact that he seems to have trouble controlling his urges, and the fact that he seems so instantly drawn to Mito's blood, which isn't surprising. She's possibly just as suitable a pairing for him as she would be for Luca. So we'll have to see what the deal with that is. But I like the fact that while at the first part of the story, he flees her for her protection, he does that to help her. Whether it sucked for her or not in the moment, it was meant with good intent. And yet, later in the story, when we see him help her again and then offer her his room and everything, we see how connected he actually is to her. And we see that he is trying to keep control of who he is, but that there's definitely some kind of internal connection going on. I wonder whether she actually is an option for either one of them, and whether that's going to become an issue going forward. as for Luka, I don't think he's a bad guy or anything, but I definitely think he's under some massive social pressures, which doesn't surprise me given what we've learned about vampires and vampire culture from this episode, because the vampires seem like they just absolutely did not want to accept Len, so it wouldn't surprise me if they really are so pushy about what's going on with Luka and with him choosing a partner and everything. We still don't know exactly why it is that it's so important that Luka be the one to succeed Komori. So we do still have that kind of up in the air, and we do have Komori screwing around a bit and being like, you promised you wouldn't fall in love with anyone, or what are you going to do? What if this isn't your destined mate, or this isn't your destined mate? And I still believe it's reverse psychology, but I'm starting to get kind of tired of the way he's doing that. It's kind of getting on my last nerve. It's like, buddy, either clue the poor bastard in, or be honest about what's really going on here, because the head games are getting a bit old, if I'm really being honest. Now, something that I think is going to divide the community going forward is the fact that Luka actually breaks down the door to Len's room. I think there are going to be some people who are going to see that as massively aggressive, jealous, or possessive behavior, and they're going to think about it based on how they would feel if something like this was happening to a girl in real life. Whereas personally, that didn't really bother me, because this is fiction, this is a vampire, this is potentially his mate, and this is his mate potentially being in a room with another man. So based off of the mythos and lore that generally goes into that territory, Luka's reaction made perfect sense for the kind of character he is and the kind of creature he is, and the ways that these creatures tend to be portrayed in media. So that did not faze me. What did faze me, and what I do think is going to potentially bite Luka on the butt going forward, was being like, if you like Len that much, you can stay with him. Okay, Luka, you said it, not me. I wonder just how much that Mito will actually take it to heart. And I wonder just how much Len will be like, okay, I like that idea. We'll have to see, I suppose. I do like how the episode wrapped up with Luka going past a clothing store and seeing the dresses, and then thinking about Mito when she was wearing a dress in the last episode. I hope that we get to a point where someone, anyone, whether it's even Komori confirming to us that he actually knows, clues in on the fact that this is a girl. It doesn't necessarily have to be the leading guys, but I absolutely despise the fact that Mito does not really have anyone in her corner in regard to this. I think that it's incredibly unhealthy for her. I think that there is a lot more storytelling and depth that could be utilized if they actually gave this information to someone. And I'm just getting really frustrated with the idea that nobody seems to be figuring this out. Especially in some of the situations that happened today, because when Luka was leaning over her and they were skin to skin on the couch, how the hell did he not know? Does she have some sort of superimposed bone structure where her boobs are turning inside out or something? What is going on? Because that made no sense. But I mean, it's all about suspension of disbelief. I get that, but I'm really not a big fan of this whole miscommunication and this identity hiding kind of tropery. It's just not my favorite. They're doing fine for what this is. It's just, I kind of hoped when I came into this show that we were going to see this get utilized maybe for an episode or two, and then at least someone close to her was going to know. And it was going to be more so a joke with them and her against the outside world. And that's absolutely not what we've gotten. Anyway, that's my thoughts on this week's episode, and I will see you guys in the next video. If you had any thoughts yourselves, feel free to comment them down below. Bye!